who aren't. I also think that like this is malleable. That like as technology increases and as some of the boundaries of entrance to a lot of these industries are broken down, people, smart black people and smart non-white people will be able to acquire resources because of having an IQ, which will increase their IQ. So like I think that I don't think it's like something intrinsically about black people that like they can't have high IQ. I think like the Chad black people are obviously more alpha than the non-Chad white people, or they're like, however we define superior, they would be considered superior. I changed my whole life when I learned to ignore them. I changed my whole
Sure.
like
Yeah.
like intellectualized hate towards the white race.
All right. Can you can you give me some examples of like what you
So
think?
like terms like white privilege, white fragility, white feminism,
Wait, what's white
basically
feminism?
every time.
I don't think I've heard that.
Well, it's a smear that it's this idea that, oh well, white women don't really like to include other women, and it's basically just one big giant smear towards white people that whites don't like to help other people. Whites treat non-whites
Um,
poorly, and but just white feminism, white flight, white fragility, white privilege. These are all just anti-white dog
sure.
whistles.
No. So I wouldn't say that they're anti-white dog whistles. I'm not familiar with all of those, but I'm definitely familiar with stuff like white privilege. And whereas I agree, I think it could be rebranded or renamed. I think the general aspect is that like white people are treated better, or maybe a better way to phrase it would be that certain groups of people, like black people, are treated worse than white people. I mean, can we agree on that?
I mean, I don't agree with that. I
So
think
wait,
that
wait. So you
like if
think
you
that
see like
black
the
people are
Covington
treated
kids,
equal in society?
like if you see like the Covington kids, where like all these kids basically did just stand there by being white, but anybody views a white man who's proud or a white man, who's confident, they view that as an attack.
I mean, I'm confident and I'm proud. I mean, I'm not proud of my whiteness because I don't really care about my whiteness, but like I would consider myself proud, and I've never had anyone um like be offended or like the SJW like
Well,
stereotype.
also no, being like identifying with your white heritage and feeling no guilt,
Well,
feeling no
okay, so this
shame.
is the thing I don't. This is the thing where you really start to lose me. So, like, what do you mean by white heritage? Because I have German descent, as
No,
in my
no,
grandmother.
I said white identity
Well,
is what
okay,
I
so
said.
white
So like
identity.
yeah,
So,
sure.
like, well, no, no,
So
I'm pretty
like
sure you
someone
said
like
white
me,
heritage, but sure,
I was raised in America.
sure.
I'm multi ethnic. I have multiple different types of white that and I have no attachment to any of those cultures. But my entire life, everywhere I've gone, I've been perceived as a white boy. I've been told, "Oh, you do this, it's so white." The other day, I was hanging out with some of my black friends, and I hopped out the car and I had no shoes on. And I walked up to this donut window to order some donuts, and they were all laughing like, "Oh, damn, you got out the car without your shoes on. That like this is a real white boy right here." Blah blah blah.
Sure.
Things like that. That's what I identify as, and it wasn't necessarily something that meant something a lot to me my whole life. But when I started, seeing people attack it and like this constant harassment and this constant just, oh, white men this, white men that, it started making me
Sh-
kind of
sh-
look into it more, and I realized that white men's interracial
right.
behavior
Yeah.
is held to a different standard than other people's racial
Well, yeah.
interracial behavior.
I mean that might have something to do with it. Like white people have been in power for a long time, and I would
Sure,
make,
but
yeah, well, yeah, and I would agree
holding
with you
black.
at least as far as it's like we shouldn't attack each other. I mean, when it comes to it, like I personally,
No,
if
no,
I
no. But
was in
like,
power, I would
people
fix
shouldn't
all the
say shit about
problems
my
if I
race.
could. Pardon?
I don't think people should say shit to me about my race. Period.
Well, wait. So do you think you should? So are
I
you
don't give a
against like
regular
people making fun of black people for being black or like the black jokes or anything? Are you against those?
I mean, I feel the same way about them.
Okay.
You know. So like, as long as it's consistent, is like I feel like it's kind of consistent behavior going back and forth. I think that both
So,
sides are pretty hateful, but I think that it's the inconsistent reaction to it. So like if there's a bunch of black girls making fun of a white girl for not having a booty, that's just funny. But if it's like a white girl that makes a joke about a black girl's hair, it's like, oh no, the poor black people. And that's the
um,
issue, is that white people are kind of realizing that we're not the ones that treat other people bad, that we actually treat other races much better than other races treat
well,
other
no.
races.
Okay. So right. So it's not all white people. I think it's regardless of what you're doing, it's really dumb to characterize like all people like with some weird like something that really doesn't matter. Like, and I don't think race or like whiteness or like blackness really defines a person.
Right? Yeah.
Um,
No, but if white people weren't being attacked, if whiteness
but
wasn't being
okay, so like I
attacked,
said, I don't think that they're being attacked by like pointing out things like white privilege, which, like I said, could be branded or could be named better, but it's still a valid concern because black people,
well,
at
no,
least
but
it
white
seems like
the idea of
statistically,
white
black
privilege
people.
is
Well, no, no, hold on.
dangerous.
Well, black people, like I said, it goes back to, do you think black people are like indiscriminately kind of fucked in this country, and why? Like the fact that black
I
people
don't.
are poorer on average than white people, like why
I
is
don't
that?
think that.
Well, no, no, no. Well, statistically speaking, this is not. Wait, 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 wait. So you're debating the like fact that black people on average are poorer statistically,
No. I think that there's a disparate there's disparate performance levels. So because of that, there's disparate outcomes. But I reject the idea that like I don't believe in the conspiracy that like life is easier for people who happen to be born white because they're
right?
born
So
white.
right. So I would reframe it to say that it's not easier on white people; it's harder on black people. That's what I would say. And do you disagree with that?
I mean, I don't think I think that black people have harder lives
And why is
on
that?
average,
And why is that? Do you think
but
that's like
because of
socially
lack of
economic?
leadership within the black community.
Okay, so you don't think it has anything to do with like redlining or like Jim Crow or like
Sure, all
historical?
these things, probably played a factor, just like a ton of things that happened to my ancestors played a factor in who I am.
Right, but
But black
well,
people,
hold on. But it's a
they need
difference
to
of
no.
historical
But black
precedent.
people today, their struggles aren't unique today.
What do you mean?
These are just like these are just regular socioeconomic
Not
issues.
not to
These are
this
regular
not
crime
to this
issues. Yeah,
degree. It's different when you look at the
no,
well, yes, because disproportionately black people are more poor or are do have higher
right.
poverty rates than white people, and that is a problem. So it's kind of like I don't know, just me trying to be like a pragmatic person and
So
trying to solve it.
the
We have
disparity the disparity between whites and Asians is about the same as the disparity between whites and black, right? It's
wait
about
wait what
average
I'm gonna
income.
need a
The
statistic
average
on that.
income. So the average income, you can look it up by ethnicity. For blacks, it's about 40,000. For whites, it's about 60,000, and for Asians, it's about 80,000. Right. So I actually already posted it in general voice, and go up.
Okay.
I had this conversation with somebody else. So
Oh, okay.
um,
One second.
the, the the disparity, looking at that, there nothing suggests to me that the reason black people are underperforming is because of some secret, plot to like hold them back, or like
It's not a,
people's
well, yeah, no, I would agree with you.
unjustified,
It's not a secret
or
plot. It's
or
not some
or or
conspiracy
or,
theory.
or even like white people's interracial ignorance. Like if you ask a lot of the anti-whites, what are the like what's one of the main problems in America, they would say, oh, the racist white people. But like in reality, like white people are really good to live around, and minorities, a lot of these minorities, their worst nightmare is the idea of segregation. So I think that white people just not it's not like the end of the world. I think that the pushback from white people is right on time. I don't think that white people are going to need like an ethno state or anything, but I
Okay.
do think that white people
Okay.
need to stand up for themselves, and in the same way
What do you
that
mean?
like you can't get away with saying nigger around black people without someone
Oh,
pressing the issue. I think the same thing is with white people. Like if you're perpetuating this narrative that it's hard to live around white people, and that white people are racist
okay, so wait,
inherently,
hold on. Yeah,
and that they're
just hold on.
oppressive.
Yeah,
If you're
okay.
saying
So no,
that,
no, hold on.
I think that you should
Okay,
be.
listen. I can't just let you sit here and ramble on for like 2 minutes. Okay, so like we gotta go back and forth, right? This is how this works.
Sure, I'm just explaining the differences between my views and other white nationalists,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So,
and right.
I'm just making
I
clarifications
like
for
that
you.
you're not advocating for it ethno state. You don't. I mean, I do you buy into the whole IQ, race, and IQ things?
Which part?
Like, do you think that black people are have on average genetically speaking lower IQs than white people?
On average, black people do have lower
Oh,
IQs
so
than
okay, but like that's what I'm saying. That's why I add the genetic part. So like genetically speaking, do you think it's due to genetics, or do you think it's something that like is just well, they've been impoverished for so long and they've been kind of like systematically fucked and they haven't had a lot of access to education. So therefore, that kind of like shows that does have an effect on
I
their
think
IQs
it's
and whatnot.
I I think it's both. I think that trauma can impact your IQ. I think that malnourishment
Yeah, of
can
course.
impact your IQ and all these different things. So logically, you would expect the people who were, being that were already living in a society that's selected for intelligence to have and higher on average intelligence than people that who aren't. I also think that like this is malleable. That like as technology increases and as some of the boundaries of entrance to a lot of these industries are broken down, people, smart black people and smart non-white people will be able to acquire resources because of having an IQ, which will increase their IQ. So, like I think that I don't think it's like something intrinsically about black people that like they can't have high IQ. I think that like the Chad black people are obviously more alpha than the non-Chad white people, or they're like, however we define superior, they would be considered superior. So I don't think it's like it because you're this race, this is your limit, and if this race, but I do acknowledge group trends.
Hello?
Hello,
Okay, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know what
Yeah, no,
I don't know what you
my
said.
bad. My mic was muted. I fucked up. But I just got this statistics up here. So it basically says white people are the white poverty rate is 8.7, the Hispanic poverty rate is 18.3, and the African American poverty rate is 21.2. So that clearly shows that there is something that are keeping black people down. Now, whether you want to argue it's race or whether you want to argue it's cultural factors, which I would argue it's completely economic, socioeconomic, and cultural factors. There is
So let me ask you
clearly.
this: why besides that, like it makes the solution a lot more complicated?
What do you mean?
Why do you why do you deny that genetics impact on it?
Um, well, no, I deny that genetics and race have a correlation to IQ or causation to IQ. Um, so that's what I'm saying, and the reason I say that is because I have not seen any credible academia to support that. Because I'm not a genetic scientist, so therefore I would
Sure, but
base
you know
my
that there's
opinions
there's
on.
two different things there. There's two different things there. There's genetics correlation to IQ, and then also race is correlation to IQ.
Sure, no, I don't know about genetics. That's not something I really like
But like
care about.
but you do understand that that's two different claims though, because there is a
Sure, right.
reality
Well,
where
okay. So which one are you making? Are you making the correlation between race and IQ
I
or
I
not
think it's
gender?
genetics and IQ. So I think that regardless of your race,
Okay.
if you have smart parents, I think that the children will be pretty smart, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then I, and
We
then I,
can
but I
we can
also
probably
think
agree
that
on that.
because we have different groups, like you can split these groups however you want, but by definition, different groups will have different averages. So I don't ignore or deny
But
the
is that because of
existence.
genetics? That's what I'm asking. Is that because of genetic reasons that different races have lower IQs? Do you think different groups of people are just genetically dumber or genetically have lower IQs? That's what I'm trying to get at.
It's like it's really hard to okay. I'm gonna explain it one more time. I think that
Sure.
IQ is a large part of your intelligence is genetic. I think that regardless of your race, if your parents are have higher IQ, you will have
Yeah, I
higher
got
IQ.
this part. Uh huh.
But what I would say is that I do think on average, white people have higher IQs than black people.
And do you think that's
But I
because of
don't I don't
genetic
think that it's
reasons?
tied. I don't think it's necessarily tied to the race. I don't think that, but I
Um.
do think that it's
Okay.
those
Yeah.
trends exist. I mean,
Sure.
trends do exist.
Okay. All right, I guess. But like I said, so, well, I mean, you said earlier that like black people are just like not disproportionately fucked, or you just don't believe in that when like it clearly shows that like black people have a much like more than double the poverty rate of white people. So I mean, like, does that clearly show that there is something that is like holding black people back? Like, can you
No,
at least concede that?
I don't. I think that that's racism of the gaps, where it's like you point to a gap and you say this is probably racism,
Well, no, no, no.
but
Well, why? Well, why do black people have more than double the poverty rate of white people? Just like how come Native Americans have almost 3 times the poverty rate of white people?
I think that the reason that disparity exists is the same reason why there's the same gap between poor and rich whites. I think that certain people make better long-term decisions,
Well, no, no,
and
no, no. So this is
and
what
they
you
put a
do.
better.
Hold on. This is what you do. You take two groups of people, I guess, right? And like in this scenario, and then you see, okay, one group of people has a poverty rate of 8.7. The other group of people has a poverty rate of 21.2. So there has to be some sort of reason behind that because that's not just something that happens naturally. theoretically, if
Why
it
not?
happened naturally, well, because I mean, for instance, how come people with disabilities have the second highest poverty rate? Well, because they're disabled, and that makes it hard for them to work and hard for them to make money and hard for them to get a good stable job. So yes, so like that's something that I could clearly say, just like Native Americans. Well, how come Native Americans are on average poor? Well, there's lots of reasons for that. I mean, the cultural factors, the fact that they
Right.
typically will live on reservations, and those are kind of just uh, ignored by the
I think
federal government and treated
I
as a
think
foreign
who a
entity.
person becomes and how successful they become is mostly reliant on three things. I think it's your genetics, your culture, and your experiences. So like I think that obviously twins, one raised in Jamaica, one raised in America, those twins at a certain age are going to have vastly different skills. They'll probably test completely different on an IQ test, but that doesn't mean that their genetics aren't playing a factor in the manifestation
Sure,
in
right,
that
but
specific
but so
situation.
wait, so wait,
So
well, hold on. So are you saying that the reason why African American in this country have a 21.2% poverty rate compared to the white poverty rate that is 8.7 is because of genetics? Because that's what it sounds like you're saying right here.
I think genetics are one of the main three things that contribute to that. Yeah.
Okay, so and then culture is another one. So you think that black culture is holding them back, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so what about black culture is holding them back?
Well, I mean, just the subculture of criminality,
Okay,
and then
okay,
also,
so why do people commit crimes?
um,
Like, what's the number one reason why people commit crimes? Like most crimes, so not like
I would
murdering your
probably
wife.
say money or a crime
Poverty.
of
It,
emotion.
it would it would be
So
poverty.
like
It wouldn't be money. It would be
a
more lack of money. That's why crime is like appealing to people, typically in poor areas. Just like I would point to the fact that it's not black people who are more violent; it's poor people. So the fact that poor
sure,
people, that black people are statistically poorer
but
than most
I would
other groups
accept
of
that.
people. That's
I would accept, like, not to be like an intersectionalist, but like I understand that all of these groups, whether we're talking about blacks, we're talking about poor, we're talking about tall, these are arbitrary groups that we're shoving people in, and like one person can be grouped can be umbrellaed with one individual in one group, not in like with
well,
someone
sure,
else.
but
So
but groups
I
are
don't
but okay,
deny
but
I
groups
don't
are
deny
important when talking about like social science because
right, but
we do need to group people because
I
different
don't
people
deny
have
that
different
like a
experiences,
poor
right?
look, I don't deny that a poor black person is probably much more likely to commit a crime than a rich black person, and
Or
a
well, no.
and
How about this? A poor white person is a lot more likely to commit a crime than a rich black person.
I don't know if that's true. I know that a poor white person is significantly more likely to
Wait,
commit a
so
crime than
just
a rich white
I'm
person.
just saying, like
So
thinking rationally, like do you really think a poor white person potentially would commit less crimes than a rich black person? Do you really think that?
I mean, I've seen studies that show that like the children of rich black people, the top 10% of blacks and the bottom percent of whites are about comparable in how likely that child will be incarcerated.
I'm gonna need to see that study.
Uh, Here,
All right, if you
it's
no, you don't have to get
the
it
the
from me right
interesting
now.
part about it.